Good morning, everybody. This is going to be another revised 40 deck tech video. In our previous revised 40 deck tech videos, we looked at a white-green deck and a mono-black deck. And those two decks adhered to all the revised 40 deck construction rules. They also were modeled after Alpha 40 deck construction rules. So those decks could be played in revised 40 or also like a casual Alpha 40 match. And so they used revised cards that were all reprinted from the Alpha Beta edition. The revised set was a little over 300 cards, and that included reprinted cards from Arabian Nights and Antiquities as well. So in our second 30th anniversary edition box opening, we were looking at revised cards that were signed by the artists, and that included revised cards that were reprints of the beta set, as well as some Arabian Nights and some Antiquities reprinted cards. So this deck is a two-color combo revised 40 deck. It also includes reprinted cards from Arabian Nights and Antiquities that our other decks didn't use. So this is our first attempt at a revised 40 deck that uses a larger pool of the revised cards. We have some basic lands. We'll sort some of these out here. We have mountains and islands are two colors that we're using for this red-blue deck. And I think we're using 7 mountains. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 mountains. We're using the blue, light blue, sky blue variation because it matches the light blue, sky blue islands. And then I think we're using 8 islands. There we go. So we have 15 lands, which is really good for a 40 card deck. We're using 2 colors, but nothing in the casting cost is greater than one blue or 1 red plus some colorless. So you could use a volcanic island if you needed a dual land for either color, but if your casting cost is pretty low, you can probably get away with not using a dual land, save some money, and put in another rare in your deck that could also make it a little more functional. We have some common cards. We're running 2 fireballs on the red. We're running, what else are we running? Lightning bolts. We're running 3 lightning bolts, but they're common cards, but they've been upped to uncommon in revised 40 because they're very good. So we have 3 uncommon lightning bolts. We have Reconstruction, which is a common card. It was printed in Antiquities, and the Antiquities Reconstruction did not have the Anvil Antiquities expansion symbol on it, so this is just a white bordered Reconstruction. It lets you bring artifacts from your graveyard to your hand. So those are common. Put those there. Actually, just put those with the commons. Those are with fireballs over here. We have Dwarven Weaponsmiths. Dwarven Weaponsmiths are uncommon. It's a 1/1 dwarf creature. During your upkeep, you can tap it to add a permanent 1/1 counter to any creature, and you must use this ability. When you use this, you must sacrifice one of your artifacts in play. So we'll put some artifacts in this deck as well. One of those artifacts is a Brassman creature, which was reprinted from the Arabian Nights set, and we've seen that card a few times on this channel in my other Arabian Nights videos. We have 3 copies of Basalt Monolith, which is a 3 colorless artifact that produces 3 colorless mana when you tap it, and then you have to pay 3 colorless to untap it and use it again. We are also using Prodigal Sorcerer, which is a common in the deck. A 1/1 creature for 1 blue, 2 colorless. When you tap it, it also does 1 damage to any target. Let's put that over here. We have, let's see here, common. Soul Ring is an uncommon. Taps to add 2 colorless to your mana pool. All right, so those are our 10. And then the last 3 commons are these Power Sinks, which counters target spell when you pay a blue and X mana on top of that. So those are our Power Sinks down there. Now, our 5 rare cards in the deck are here. I'll take a photo there. All right, so Mana Vault, the most expensive rare in this deck. There's 3 copies of that. When it's for 1 colorless, you tap and adds 3 colorless mana to your mana pool, but it doesn't untap as normal. It does 1 damage to you unless you pay 4 mana to untap it. There's also 1 copy of Amulet, which is a reprinted Antiquities card in the revised set, and it's rare. It has a rare rarity, which is interesting because it's not a very great card. For 3 colorless mana, it's a 2/2 artifact creature that gives the controller 2 life when it's placed in the graveyard. But it has some interesting kind of interaction with the Dwarven Weaponsmith. So if you were to tap the Dwarven Weaponsmith and give another creature 1/1 and sacrifice an artifact, you could sacrifice Amulet and gain 2 life. You could also use Hurkyl's Recall, which is an Antiquities reprinted card in the revised set. This lets the target player, you target an opponent or yourself, and that player must pick up all the artifacts into their hand. And then discards any enchantments on those artifacts. So if someone somehow enchanted your artifact, you could get rid of the enchantments by picking up Hurkyl's Recall. So we have Amulet, Hurkyl's Recall, and 3 Mana Vaults. So you can see this deck fits into the revised 40 composition rules. There's 5 rares, 3 copies of the Mana Vault. There's 10 uncommons: Brassman, Basalt Monolith, Soul Ring, Lightning Bolt, and Dwarven Weaponsmith. And then the rest are all commons. We have 2 Fireballs, 3 Reconstructions, 2 Prodigal Sorcerers, 3 Power Sinks. And that's kind of the deck. Let's give it a quick shuffle and test out kind of like how the deck plays out, and maybe like a sample hand here. It's the first deck we've looked at in the revised 40 series that uses the reprinted Arabian Nights and Antiquities cards from revised. And I have a couple more decks that are revised 40 in different colors. They also match the Alpha 40 deck construction rules. So we'll take a look at those as well at some point, and you can kind of see what different decks might also look like. All right, what do you think? Does this deck have potential? I have not played Dwarven Weaponsmith very often or Amulet, so I'm thinking that like with Mana Vault, they could possibly have some utility in revised 40. We'll just give that a quick pile shuffle. That. You get the idea. Okay, and then if you're playing on a webcam, your opponent can pick which pile they want to shuffle. 1, 2, or 3. Maybe they do 2, 1, 3, like that. I'll save those dice. We might use those for the Dwarven Weaponsmith if we have it. So we'll start with 7 cards. Take a look at our opening hand And that looks pretty good. All right, so we'll take the play. We are going to start by playing Mountain. Let's go ahead and tap that Mountain. And let's go ahead and cast a Mana Vault. Why not, right? And then why don't we just go ahead and tap that Mana Vault to add 3 colorless to our mana pool. And let's cast a Basalt Monolith. Why not? Now we have tons of colorless mana. And that's all we can do. So we're going to pass the turn. Opponent draws, plays land, does something. They pass it over to us. We're going to untap our land. We're going to think about maybe taking a damage from the Mana Vault, but since we have 4 colorless, let's go ahead and tap and pay the 4 colorless. So let's untap the Mana Vault, not take a damage. We're tapped out, but we're going to draw a card for turn. We will play an island for turn. We will go ahead and let's tap that. And let's cast another Mana Vault. So we have tons of colorless mana available to us this match. And then at some point we want to cast this Dwarven Weaponsmith so that we can start sacrificing artifacts and preventing some damage. All right, but we don't have any creatures yet, so we will pass the turn to the opponent. They'll do something, they'll pass it back to us, and then we are going to untap our lands. We are not exactly going to untap the monolith yet. We could use a Mana Vault to pay for that, but we're going to just leave that tapped right now because it does not do damage to us, unlike the Mana Vaults. Then we'll draw for turn. We'll play a land. Oh, perfect. So there's an island. And we want to get this Onulet onto the battlefield because it's a 2/2 creature. So we're going to tap this Mana Vault for 3 colorless, and we're going to cast Onulet, which is a 2/2 artifact creature. And then we're also going to tap a Mountain and this colorless, and let's go ahead and cast this Dwarven Weaponsmith as well. That's going to be our other creature for the turn. We still have a Mana Vault available. We have an Onulet that just got cast, and a Dwarven Weaponsmith, and a tapped Basalt Monolith, plus 1 Reconstruction in our hand. So we'll pass the turn, see what the opponent does. We're looking pretty good. They're going to finish their turn. They're going to pass it back to us. Now what can we do? So right now, we're going to untap our lands. During our untap phase, we wanted to decide on maybe are we going to untap this Mana Vault or not, but I think what we're going to do is we're going to let's tap that Mana Vault for 3 colorless to untap this Basalt Monolith. We're going to tap Dwarven Weaponsmith to add a 1/1 counter to Onulet. We must discard an artifact. So we're going to discard Mana Vault that was tapped so that this Mana Vault does not do damage to us. And I think if that works out correct, we have a Basalt Monolith online. We have an Onulet that is now a 3/3 creature. And we have a tapped Dwarven Weaponsmith, and we have 3 lands, 1 card in hand. We'll draw for turn. We drew a land, which is perfect. Let's play the Mountain. And we can attack with the Onulet. Let's attack for 3. Perfect. Like that. And we can't do anything with the Mana Vault because it's tapped. We used it to untap the Monolith, so we'll pass the turn. Then, let's see. It's the opponent's turn. Actually, before we pass the turn, let's go ahead and tap this island for reconstruction. we're gonna go bring one artifact from the graveyard to our hand. Let's get Mana Vault, and then let's go ahead and tap this mountain. Let's go ahead and cast Mana Vault, so we have an extra access to more colorless mana. And then we'll pass turn, we're done. They do a bunch of stuff, and then it comes over to our turn, and on the untap, we're gonna untap the lands, we'll untap the Onulet, we can untap Dwarven Weaponsmith. We can also tap Basalt Monolith and a colorless mana. Let's tap the island to untap this Mana Vault. So now the Mana Vault does not do damage to us. Let's go ahead and tap Dwarven Weaponsmith to add a counter. So let's make this a 4/4, and then we have to discard an artifact. So why don't we go ahead and let's just discard the Basalt Monolith. Let's do that. So now we have a Basalt Monolith in the graveyard, a tapped Dwarven Weaponsmith, a 4/4 Onulet, and 2 Mana Vaults. So we're gonna attack for turn with a 4/4 Onulet, just like that. We have no cards in hand. Looking pretty good. They'll do something, pass it to us, we draw, and we drew another Basalt Monolith. Perfect. We just discarded one. So having 3 of these in the deck is great. That is my kind of idea how I think Dwarven Weaponsmith and Mana Vault could kind of work together to avoid taking damage from the Mana Vault. I think that's a pretty good combo. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. If this deck has been helpful to you, feel free to make your own version of it. Like the video if you like this deck. If you like any of the cards in the video, like it as well. And subscribe to the channel. We'll do more deck tech videos like this in the future. So if you're interested in playing Revised 40, you can use any of these ideas for games of Magic. Appreciate you watching. Have a great day. We'll see you next time.